Welcome back to Unique Adolescent Minds Unlocked. Today we're diving into a topic that is often talked about, but truly rarely understood: Autism Spectrum Disorder in the adolescent population. Think of it this way. Almost all of us, parents, teachers, counselors, those that are listening right now, we run on a certain kind of operating system. Let's call it the neurotypical operating system. It's like the default setting for the human brain. It's great for quick recalling things, reading social cues, unspoken rules, dealing all with a bunch of sensory input all at one time. But for the incredible teens or adolescents that we support who are on the autism spectrum, they're running on a completely different, custom, and oftentimes more powerful operating system. Let's call that the autistic OS. It's brilliant at spotting patterns, diving deep into passion projects, and processing information with incredible detail. It's a powerful machine, but its running world is built different from our defaults. When we see behavioral disturbances, such as the meltdowns, the shutdowns, the intense amounts of stress, we're not looking at a bad kid at all. We're looking at a system overload. We're seeing a highly complex operating system trying to process the incompatible data because the world around it hasn't provided the right user manual. Today, we're going to try to build that manual. We're talking to an expert, Dr. Copeland, about how the adults in their lives can stop trying to force a system update and start appreciating the unique and powerful hardware settings about our youth. We'll cover why those glitches happen sometimes and how we can partner to provide the right support, accommodations, and most of all, the understanding. So let's dive in. Dr. Copeland, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Absolutely. My name's Nathan Copeland. I am a child psychiatrist. Clinically, I mostly see autistic and neurodiverse kids and also what I would call disabled kids and young adults as well at the Duke Center for Autism and Brain Development. And then a lot of my other work and space that I work in is in kind of the integrated care space. So how to build supportive mental health systems that often exist outside of the four walls of our traditional mental health systems, whether that's in primary care, schools, things along those lines, trying to think about how to translate those services with this idea of how do we bring services to where the kid is rather than necessarily have the kid or adult come to us.
Yeah. You are in for a great treat today with Dr. Copeland. I told you he's an expert. So basically, to start our conversations, can you offer our listeners a concise, accessible definition of autism spectrum disorder? Explain it in simple terms, what it is and what it's not.
Sure, and I'll do the best that I can. I actually thought your definition was great that you were sharing with the listeners. So, autism spectrum disorder, being autistic or what have you, one of the best ways to think about it is a different way of engaging the world than a lot of other individuals might engage the world. And we use the word disorder, and that can be a kind of a medicalizing term. Mm-hmm. It could also be viewed as a difference, right? So a difference, and there's kind of two categories that we see both of in individuals that are autistic, which is a difference in navigating social nuance, navigating social spaces, how you approach people, how you make friends, right, how you maintain friends, how you communicate. And that's kind of like what we might call like a category A. And then we've got like our category B, which is more restricted interest, right? Where you see a difference in certain types of behaviors where we might call like stereotyped behaviors like hand flapping, spinning, but also ways of communicating, right? That there can be different ways that people use words, different ways that they use their voice, echolalia, repetition of phrases, things like that can fit in that category. differences in how you experience the sensory world,
Yeah.
right? Lights can be brighter, sounds can be louder, or vice versa. Pain can be less, things along those lines. So different ways in the sensory space. We also see really restricted interest, and a lot of individuals get very fascinated with the restricted interest piece, and it is definitely a space of strength and definitely a space of curiosity for people that have really intense interest. I've worked with multiple kids that their intense interest are fascinating, right? Where you might have an adolescent, or I've worked with an adolescent that loves fire alarms in ceilings, and he can name like the actual that is make, model, da 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 for like fire alarms, and this is this and this. I've worked with a kid that was very into the Simon Says games. I don't know if you remember those.
Yes.
They're like different color coded things, and you would tap out the color coded based on the pattern. And this kid had these Simon Says games spanning decades.
Wow.
Right. And he just loved them. And he, even at a young age, like, you're probably the world's expert in Simon Says games because of your intense interest in that. Right. And that space, leads to a lot of strengths in different ways. And then the fourth category that we look at in this group is a strong need for routine, structure, and predictability. And for that space of routine, structure, and predictability to be a source of comfort. And when it gets disrupted, it can make the day-to-day world very challenging for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the word curiosity, right? All of this is a way of understanding your environment and developing a passion surrounding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how you think about that, and what I think one of the fun things about this work, and one of the fun things, very much just about being human, is the acknowledgement that people experience the world differently.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about this conceptualization that we call autism, there are lots of ways that people can be autistic, but it's seeing kind of this certain pattern that someone might engage the world in.
Yeah, absolutely. Given the complex nature of the diagnosis, and that is autism spectrum, can you explain how the presentation may shift or change from like early childhood into like adolescent, teenage years, especially for those that may have been undiagnosed or even misdiagnosed early?
Right, absolutely. And when we talk about autism, and we're talking about what we call a neurodevelopmental condition, and other things fall into neurodevelopmental conditions as well. ADHD. Some people think like tic disorders and things like that fall into neurodevelopmental conditions. You're mapping on a neurodevelopmental condition onto what is normal development, right? And the way we kind of think of normal development can exist in multiple different ways. There can be physical development, social development, things along those lines. If we're just talking about those teenage years, one of my just go-to people for development is Erik Erikson, right? And he called this the teenage adolescent stage of development, identity versus role confusion. Right, where normal identity in an adolescent, right, what we might call normal development, putting like air quotes up there, normal development, is very much a teenager starts aligning with other teenagers, and a teenager explores the world with other teenagers, who they are, what they are. They try on identities, they try off of identities, right? Like you could think about yourself. You probably went through a lot of musical changes, maybe a lot of clothing changes when you were an adolescent, right? As you kind of form who you are as a person. And for autistic individuals that maybe are getting diagnosed a little bit later, that maybe have this pattern of behaviors, the first thing that you might see is whereas kids that are getting diagnosed younger, they have often a more intense presentation one way or another, or a more impairing presentation that raises them quicker to a need for a psychological evaluation, whereas teenagers that haven't been assessed or diagnosed might have had kind of softer features where they've been able to navigate the world in different ways, had different strengths. People didn't necessarily say they need to be evaluated one way or another. But then you start getting into these teenage years where teenagers are very much engaging with each other. Also, school is getting harder, right? And so you're seeing teenagers that are getting diagnosed, the ones that get diagnosed later, really start having differences or maybe confusion or, more extreme ways struggling with navigating that social dynamic, right? Where maybe they don't understand other adolescents' sarcasm, which is common in adolescence, right? That these kind of abstract phrases they're not picking up on, which can really kind of disrupt how they interact with other peers and other adolescents.
Right. They may be considered like weird or something.
Yeah. And they're like, I don't understand why they said that.
Right.
Like, what did that mean? Why did they say it that way? Why did they use that tone?
Right.
You can also start seeing, the other thing that starts happening in adolescence is in kind of the school world, the way school is structured is adolescents need to be more organized.
Yeah.
They need to be more routine and structured in how they approach schoolwork. And if a kid doesn't kind of have that naturally, that disruption of not having a much more structured day and clear expectations can have increasing challenges for that kid and make school a lot harder. So what you might start seeing is these kids that socially they're struggling more, academically they're starting to struggle more, and maybe somebody's always thought they might look a little bit different. What we also see in these kids is more likely to kind of exhibit ADHD symptoms, more likely to exhibit anxiety symptoms, things along those lines. And the presentation just might look a little different for that kid.
You brought up a good point that I didn't even think about. When you think about elementary school and then middle school and then even high school, things are super structured. Like you walk in a line to go to your next class, or you stay in the class the entire day and your teacher is telling you what to do. As you get older, you get more autonomy and the bell rings and you're supposed to just go to your next thing. So the flow is a lot different. So the light bulb just went off for me. Like I can understand why kids may struggle and things are more pronounced to teachers or et cetera, parents, when those grades or things start dropping because their structure is less at that point.
Absolutely. School is a fascinating thing. And as school has been developed over time, it is very much designed to meet the developmental needs of where the kid is, right? Both socially and academically. And, when you look at kindergarten to 12th grade, these have all been designed thoughtfully, but often for a neurotypical population. And when you have a neurodiverse kid or a neurodiverse population, that structure can kind of fall apart without other supports or accommodations.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned this when you're talking about the co-occurring like medical conditions that can happen with that. And we know in North Carolina, I think they say the rates is like 1 in 52 of children can have autism. And then sometimes even 70 to 90% of children in the adolescent population can have the anxiety, the depression, the co-occurring illnesses with that. ADHD is another one. Can you discuss the high rates of co-occurring conditions and why are these sometimes mistaken for the core symptoms of autism spectrum disorder?
Great question. And the number might actually be closer to 1 in 36 right now. I think those might be kind of updated CDC numbers for what we're seeing for an autistic patient population or, an autistic group. And really, like, the first thing that I want to say when I say that of like autism is how we are appreciating in our society now. I said something like this earlier, that we are different.
Yeah.
We have differences, right? We contain multitudes, right? Like people experience the world differently and engage the world differently, and we are appreciating that. And there's lots of different pathways to this conceptualization that we call autism, which is really this way of engaging the world. And I really appreciate this question. It's actually something that I see in clinic regularly, which is just because someone is autistic does not necessarily mean that they should have insomnia or anxiety or depression or irritability or ADHD, right? There are individuals that are autistic that don't have any of that, right? And so being mindful that there are things that might make life harder for an autistic person or family, right? Especially young kids that aren't sleeping at all, who might go years without sleeping regularly, and the parents that subsequently haven't slept for years either, right? And the bandwidth just gets narrower and narrower and narrower. That kids still need sleep. It's just their brain is different in a way that makes sleep a little bit harder. If we were to kind of hold in this adolescent space a little bit as well. So certainly the rates for almost all what we would call mental illnesses, where you've got this condition that is impairing for the person, are higher in autism spectrum disorder, and there could be a number of reasons for that. One is, again, when I say there are multiple different pathways to being autistic, we work with lots of individuals who have different genetic syndromes, who are autistic, likely because of the genetic syndromes. They are presenting with this pattern of behavior, perhaps this like shared neural pathway that exhibits this pattern of behavior for different reasons. Right. It could be a 22q11 deletion syndrome. It could be tuberous sclerosis. It could be Phelan-McDermid syndrome, right? There are a number of genetic syndromes that also exhibit this pattern of behavior. And each one of these syndromes, and individuals that don't have any identified genetic syndromes, have a different kind of foundation for why they're exhibiting these behaviors. And in each one of these syndromes, you might see different rates of mental illness, right? 22q11 deletion syndrome, you might see more psychotic disorders, things along those lines. And then you just have kind of, if you have a neurodiverse brain, you're also more likely to just have like a neurodiverse way that you engage the world. And when you have kind of neurodiversity, again, things that we talk about for neurodiversity include things like ADHD and tics, things along those lines. So if you're neurodiverse in one way, you're more likely to be neurodiverse in other ways. Right. The other piece, and this is especially when we're talking about kind of this adolescent space and talking about anxiety and talking about routine, structure, and predictability. A number of autistic individuals will report that the world puts them constantly on edge because the world is not predictable. Yeah. The world is not routine and structured. Other children, other peers aren't predictable or routine or structured. So the very people that you might be in class with might be doing things that are impulsive or might be overwhelming for them. And that just gives this heightened anxiety. Anxiety is, next to ADHD and insomnia, anxiety is probably the most common thing that we see. And a lot of it is because of, this individual is trying to navigate this world that might not make a whole lot of sense to them. The other piece in talking about that social nuance is also autistic individuals recognizing that, especially kind of these teenage years, that they're not navigating the world the same way that their peers are, right? And so they're not laughing at the same jokes. They're not picking up on the same sarcasm. And that itself can be a little bit disorienting and hard to navigate for that person. So there are ways that we can see these rates of what we call mental illness increase kind of across the board. And if you think also, when you think about, somebody struggling for different reasons, and you layer in an anxiety disorder and maybe already like an ADHD condition, and then you're having more difficulty navigating the world, those you're seeing increasing rates of major depressive disorder, also increasing rates of substance use disorders, right? Kind of this self-medicating approach of I need something to help me like self-soothe, to help me calm, things along those lines.
Yeah, to help manage. And, I want to jump a little bit because you talked about the idea like if I'm not getting my friends' jokes, my peers' jokes, that may lead to me more isolation. Or the other hand, they may find themselves masking or trying to fit in. Like, what do I need to do to change myself? And sometimes that can lead to substance use disorders or anything else. What are the key social communication difference for autistic adolescents that parents or teachers might observe and things that they should be looking out for?
And the acknowledgement. And let me go a couple directions because you brought up the word masking, and this idea of individuals feeling the need to wear different costumes based on the circumstance that they exist in so that they can better able to navigate that circumstance. The first thing that I want to say there is we all mask in certain ways.
Talk about it.
Right? Like we talk to each other differently than how we would talk to our friends, differently than how we would talk to our family, differently than how we would talk to the people that we serve, differently than how we would talk to our spouse.
Yeah.
We have different relationships in those ways, and we have all learned how to navigate that, often without thinking about it, right? And our brain is doing kind of all of these massive like navigation tools. And for many of us that are doing that, we are able to do it in a way that is authentic and true to ourselves, right? We acknowledge that when I am in this space, I can still be who I am, but me approaching in this certain way works a little bit better. Right? Like I can use these words over here. I can't use these words over here. I can use this tone over here. I can't use this tone over here. Right? Like, you could draw out like a more extreme circumstance, right? You could think like, the Duke women's soccer team who's playing Notre Dame for the semifinal ACC championship tomorrow, right? Like if a soccer player walks into a classroom and kicks a soccer ball, people will be like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't the right place for this, right? Or if the soccer player, who is working as a barista talks to their customers the same way that they're talking to their teammates when they're 2 down in a soccer match, they're going to get fired as a barista, right?
On the spot.
On the spot, right? And so that individual knows how to navigate that. This is we all do this. A challenge for autistic individuals is a lot of autistic individuals will report that or experience this, that they put on these different costumes, these different masks in an inauthentic way, right? In order for them to navigate these different spaces, they have to perform in a way that is inauthentic to them.
Yeah.
The other piece is that a lot of autistic individuals that mask also cover up the things that cause them distress, right? So autistic individuals report that stimming is actually something that is self-soothing for them.
Okay.
It is calming for them. And so you have to imagine this autistic individual that knows if I twirl my hands a certain way, people look at me and people are going to judge me in a certain way. And so they stop. And so they experience this just extent of physical distress, having to meld into this world that doesn't work for them, right? Yeah. Or perhaps the fluorescent lights are too bright, but they know that this is what everyone else is existing in, or maybe the stadium is too loud, but they still have to sit in it. And it causes profound physical distress, right? And this is where you can see kind of like this autistic burnout picture where people think about, just in order for me to navigate day to day requires so much emotional bandwidth that it is exhausting. And this is when we start seeing, if we're talking about mental illness, it is also totally fair, especially in talking about an adolescent population, to acknowledge that autistic individuals have much higher rates of suicide, completed suicide, than non-autistic individuals. And one of the reasons for that is because of this constant need to try and figure out how to put on different masks, take off different masks, how to suppress their own physical distress in order to engage in a world that isn't that doesn't fit them, right? And so in thinking about that, think about that mask like on and off piece. We're thinking about especially kind of a adolescent that hadn't been diagnosed with autism before, and they are now bumping up against this stage of life that requires them, or the expectation of them, is to interact with other teenagers, to navigate different social contexts, right? And if you are neurotypical and you are in high school, you probably popped between multiple different social groups.
Correct.
Right? Like, I've got my study friends over here. I've got my athletic friends over here. I've got my cool friends over here. I've got my friends that, my art friends over here, right? And I am a member of all of these groups, and I can navigate all of those groups, and all of those individuals are also a part of multiple different groups. For an autistic teenager to try and do that is going to be super overwhelming, right? And so to be mindful, for parents to be mindful as kids are moving into this period of their life where normal development is engaging with others, if you start seeing kids struggling in a way, if you start seeing kids being overwhelmed by this experience in a way that maybe you weren't seeing before, maybe there was ADHD before, maybe there was a smidge of anxiety before, kind of keeping that on the radar of, I wonder if there's an autism picture that is going on here. The other piece to think about as well, when we're talking about masking, when we're talking about things along these lines, girls, autistic girls, often report masking more, or had exhibited features of being able to mask easier. I've also heard other reports that I don't think this is pejorative. Boys and men are often just more autistic, like as a group, right, and not picking up like social nuances and social skills, which maybe is part of the why boys there's remains like a 2 to 3 to 1 diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. However, it is also very possible that girls and women mask more frequently. And so we aren't picking up on the rates because the features either look softer, or that person is working a lot harder to not exhibit the autistic features because they have a societal expectation to behave in a certain way, right? And so they are trying to, despite the world feeling different and foreign, they are trying to meet the expectations of what the world is putting on them.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up so many different points, and even alluding to why even early diagnosis or understanding awareness of autism could be beneficial for the younger population to alleviate some of or reduce some of the symptoms of anxiety, depression, even suicide rates that may come along with such this burden and intense stress to have to perform. I can feel that is exhausting to be on. But even the thing you touched on as well is like puberty, getting older, all those things, the
Yeah.
social dynamics, the changes that's put on our adolescents at that time can unmask a lot more symptoms that we didn't see before.
Right.
And learning that search for identity, where do I fit in, et cetera, can also elude or help parents, teachers understand that if a person is not performing correctly, or if I have some insight on them not doing well, maybe I need to put on this hat a little bit to think further about how I can assist them.
Absolutely.
I want to know, especially because I am a Instagram, TikTok girly, social media, and there's a lot of things, even like autism TikTok is very big.
Yeah.
There's a lot of myths going around
Sure.
about what is autism.
Yeah.
What can you explain or say, like, the myths are, and it's absolutely not autism, although you may find many different resources online that say, hey, I'm autistic, these are the things that I do.
Right. That great point. I also want to highlight as well, when we talk about autism spectrum disorders, when we use that phrase, being autistic, someone meets a certain criteria.
Yeah.
Right. And I 100% acknowledge that criteria is can be viewed as arbitrary. It can be viewed as, why was this criteria decided on and not this criteria? And ultimately, it's often looking at, well, these individuals have a more clear kind of pattern of behaviors, and this group of individuals would more benefit from these type of therapies. However, when I was going through those kind of different criteria that existed, there might be a lot of people that say, well, I don't have 3 of those, but I have 1 of those. Or, I don't have that one, but I have 2 over here. Like, what does that mean for me? And this idea that actually a lot of us have these characteristics, and a lot of us benefit from some of these characteristics, right? There are strengths within these characteristics of, I need routine and structure, and so I create routine and structure, right? I have a restricted interest, and so that restricted interest, I am able to drill down in a way that no other human being can, and can develop an expertise in something, right? And the trying to be careful about medicalizing things.
Right.
And we call that a broad autism phenotype. Right. And so just because someone doesn't meet like the full diagnostic criteria of autism spectrum disorder, someone can experience this broad autism phenotype. There are probably a lot of people that experience a broad autism phenotype in one way or another, right? Or maybe someone doesn't have any of the restrictive and repetitive behaviors, but maybe their social nuance challenges are a little bit different. Maybe that falls into like a social communication disorder or something along those lines, right? So I want to be mindful that there are lots of individuals that are trying to understand who their identity is, right? When you're talking about being an Instagram and TikTok person, if you are looking at Instagram and TikTok of adolescents, you are probably looking at individuals trying to understand who they are and what they are, right? And who they were a year ago might be different than who they are now. I'll make a more broad statement, which is what we have learned about identity and who we are is that one of the most important things that parents can do and us as a community can do is support people who are navigating who they are, right? Telling people you're not that isn't always the most supportive approach, right?
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful. They're going to navigate it at their own time anyways. And instead of saying, I hear, okay, like you're exploring this, how can I be supportive, in the way that you explore this? How can we ensure that the way that you explore this is safe and is authentic to who you are and want to be? And also being very mindful about how someone explores something. is, could there be like a comorbid mental illness or something along those lines that someone has changed the way that they're exploring their identity because they're experiencing internal sense of distress, right? Or maybe they've experienced a recent trauma or traumatic experience that has kind of disrupted their own internal sense of identity and well-being. As far as misconceptions, and I want to pause real quick. Did I answer some of your question
you answered
there?
it. Keep going. Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to be sure I'm giving you what you need. As far as other misconceptions go, one thing that I do want to point out is the autistic youth and young adults and adults that I work with are substantially empathetic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? And actually one of the things that most upsets a lot of people that I work with is unfairness. Right? And that this person got this, but this person didn't get that. This person changed the rules in order to win, which made it difficult for other people to be able to win.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a piece of it that is really refreshing in doing this work, which is someone saying, no, you can't do that, right? Like as a society, we sometimes
we don't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
As a society, we're like, oh yeah, they changed the rules a little bit. Oh yeah, that is unfair.
Yeah.
That's just the world we live in. And then there are people that who they are, who their identity is going, no, that's unfair and I'm not going to live with it, right?
I love that bonus. Yes.
Right? And they will call it out and to be able to sit in that and be like, yes, you are right. That is unfair.
Yeah.
And maybe rather than us working on how you feel about it being unfair, maybe we should actually work on the unfairness that is occurring, right? and that is very important for us in kind of lots of ways. There is some, I don't know if it's pejorative or stereotyped or myth about autistic individuals not having empathy.
Yeah.
And that is the opposite of what we often see. And often like actually not often not like how that person engages the world.
Yeah.